That's called a great play call by Joel Klatt. Someone here to make me smarter. Former Colorado record-setting quarterback, Fox Sports lead college football analyst, and UFL analyst, of course. Joel, how are you? You're a golf guy too, I hear.
I do love golf. I was locked in yesterday. I'm doing great. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me, Kay.
Well, what'd you? Thanks for. Are you kidding me? You're like you're my Encyclopedia Britannica, all things draft. Before we get to that, what was your takeaway? Were you rooting for Rory? Maybe put into context for somebody who's a casual fan. What does this mean for the sport, for him?
Yeah, so regardless of sport, I tend to root for history. I want to see history, and so I was rooting for Rory during the course of the day, and it was the most bipolar round of golf that you've ever seen. So for instance, he hits this little wedge shot on the 13th hole into Rays Creek, and I'm just here to tell you, a 15 handicap probably hits the green from where he was 9 out of 10 times, 10 out of 10 times. It was probably the worst shot that he's ever hit in his life. And yet to overcome that and still go on to win, that was pretty cool. I was locked in. That was riveting television because of the nature of the up and down kind of bipolar round of golf that he played.
And I love the Twitter discourse of I could do that, and I will what, making fun of all the shots.
That one really is that one was mind blowing.
Weird.
I was off the couch. I was almost on my hands and knees. What just happened?
It was a beautiful thing. I think it's great for golf, and it was historical, like you said. And we root for history, or do we? Right? This Nico situation, the Tennessee quarterback, that could be historical or precedential. In a way, it's all the rage. I listened to the Joe Klatt show this morning, and you really eloquently laid out both sides. I love that. But what side are you on?
I'm on the side of college football growing to a point where we've got structure and rules and guardrails in a place where this isn't an issue.
Yes.
So to me, Kay, it's really not about this instance as much as what happens moving forward from this particular instance, because this is not unique. And I said on the show, I'm surprised that it hasn't been there hasn't been a more public facing dispute like this yet. And this is just the first time that both the school and the player drew a line in the sand and said, we're not willing to cross that line. The spring transfer portal, there's two transfer portals if you're unfamiliar with college football, one right after the season in January, and then one right after spring football, that we're about to experience. And what happens in the spring transfer portal is basically one of two things. A player is unhappy with his playing time and wants to transfer, or he wants more money and then transfers in order to get more money. And what happens is that either parents and or agents that are responsible for these players in college go and they shop their player around college football. Now, it's been reported, although I don't want to say the names, but that there was a very high-profile coach that tipped Tennessee off, that Nico and his people were out basically shopping him around, which led Josh Heupel to confront him and so on and so forth. Now, I also know, and I said this in my show as well, Kay, it's not just about money. What's being reported is very one-sided at this point. Nico Iamaleava did not just all of a sudden say, I want $1.5 million more and I'm willing to leave because of that. There is more at play, but we're not going to hear that side of the narrative because Nico is a one-man band right now with no PR behind him. And Tennessee is a giant operation with an entire fan base, an entire PR and SID department. So they're going to set the narrative, which has now been set, that this kid wanted more money and he was willing to leave because of it. There's more at play. There's always more at play. And again, let me just go back to kind of the first part of the answer. And I know I'm always long-winded, so I apologize.
No, it's great.
My hope is that instances like this drive our sport forward so that we can create what is very simple in my estimation, which is mutually agreed upon rules that then are enforced. That's what we have in the NFL. That's what we have in every league. And we need that in college football.
If you could go in there, Joel, what is the simple solution? What's the rule?
Well, so the simple solution is what I just laid out. The hard part is finding those actual guidelines and guardrails. What are they? The reason that it's been hard throughout the history of college football to find consensus on what the rules should be and how to enforce them is because there's too many cooks in the kitchen. You got every chancellor and you got every president and conference commissioner and so on and so forth. at the table and you got to get them all to agree on one set of rules, which is impossible. It's like 1,000 people trying to turn the Titanic. You know, you got 1,000 people with their hands on the steering wheel. The ship is going to go straight and it's going to hit 18 icebergs. So we need less people in charge or less people with power. And that's starting to happen. Now, I danced around your question. Here's what I believe should happen is that there needs to be one transfer portal window throughout the year.
Oh.
And the way that we operate in college football needs to mimic every other professional league, although everyone wants to shy away from the word professional. So like imagine for a moment, Kay, you deal primarily in the NFL and you do a great job, obviously. Imagine for a moment that free agency popped up the same week of the first round of the NFL playoffs.
No, like I can't fathom how dumb that would be. That would suck.
Of course,
for me.
of course. Imagine for a moment that we had OTAs and then a second round of free agency.
No.
Yeah, imagine for a moment
Yeah.
that none of the contracts meant anything whatsoever and every player could just shop himself around at any point. Well, obviously that's all crazy. So what do we need?
Yeah.
We need a calendar that reflects a better way to compete, build a roster, and then prepare for the season. And all three of those areas or sections of time need to be separate from one another. And whatever those time periods are, they need to be separate from one another. And then the last thing would be the contracts that these players are signing, in particular as we move into the area of revenue sharing, need to be concrete and they need to be have some teeth on the other end so that there are penalties for breach of contract.
What's his market? Is he going? I've heard that he gets interest from. Like, there's 3 teams. What's his market?
Go ahead. I think West Coast. He's a West Coast guy. He can't go to the SEC because you can't transfer and be eligible right away in the SEC. So he's leaving that conference. So it leaves basically, if you want to stay in either the Big Ten or the SEC, you can't go to the SEC. You want to stay in one of those conferences and you want to be on the West Coast. So it basically leaves those 4 Big Ten West Coast schools, Washington, Oregon, UCLA, or USC. He's from Southern California. I would be pretty surprised if he doesn't land at either USC or UCLA.
Is there any chance he not how do I say this? Like the way that I thought of this when I was reading the story this morning, I was like, is he sure there's a market for him? What does it mean if he doesn't have a market for him? But that's unlikely.
I think that's unlikely. I don't think he would have dug his heels in from his side unless there was a market for him. And regardless if he gets the full asking price, someone's going to be out there because remember, like this is an irrational market. It's not like the NFL where, you know, if you're commanding or want more than what the market is going to pay, then you're just not going to be in the league. That's not the case in college because some booster is going to be like, well, I want that guy in my uniform. Yeah. So the emotional nature and the irrational nature of the college market, he'll land somewhere. Like I said, I think it's going to be at one of the 2 Southern California schools. And what the amount is, who knows? He is a very good player. I do think that there was some talk from his camp about wanting the offense at Tennessee to change a little bit. Because that offense in its nature does not prepare you well for the National Football League. It's basically the old Baylor offense from Art Briles, and we have not seen a quarterback succeed going from that particular offense into the next level.
So it's more about just money, everybody.
Of course it is. Of course it is. But you're not going to hear that because the narrative is going to be set from the Tennessee side. Understood.
And then, I hope it all ends up great for everybody. Thanks for all that knowledge this morning. You know Shedeur Sanders. I just went over the news about Derek Carr. I've been saying man, it would be really nice if he ended up with the Saints. You have him mocked right now going 3 to the Giants in your mock draft 2.0. Excited to see the new versions of that. I talked to Shedeur for the first time last week. One thing that I thought was interesting, and I guess we can just start with the Saints there. Do you like that fit in New Orleans? Is there something to like about the New Orleans fit more than the Steelers' potential fit if he falls that way?
Hard to know because obviously you're going through a transition in New Orleans from a coaching perspective. So it's hard to really put a finger on that. Now, playing for an offensive-minded coach, I think would be solid for him. One thing that I think about Shedeur, and I would love your thoughts on this, is what you hear about Shedeur and then what you experience when you talk and meet with him are two different things. And he's incredibly personable, very intelligent, team-oriented. He's tough. That's the one thing. You can't question his toughness. You can't question his accuracy. And in the day and age in college football, and I think that, I think people that are more NFL people are starting to realize this. Every offense in college scripts winners for their quarterback. So it's hard to find tape and find a guy that has been asked to sit in the pocket and read things out to 2, 3, 4 in the progression. It's really hard. He's been asked to do that by Pat Shurmur in that offense. So his transition, I actually think, is going to have less volatility than maybe some other players that try to transition to the National Football League. I do like his fit in New Orleans, but I just think the Giants have to have an answer at quarterback. Whether it's their first pick in the first round or whether it's their next pick in the second round, and I think Cleveland's in that boat as well. Those two teams have to find a quarterback, and because of that, I don't think they're both going to pass in the first round, because if they do, they are gambling, because someone will pick up Shedeur, whether it's Pittsburgh or New Orleans. And then all of a sudden you're stuck, if you will, with like maybe just Jackson Dart, because after Jackson Dart, there's really not a quarterback. So are New York and Cleveland really willing to like roll the die and sit there and wait to the second round? I don't think that that's the case. I think
tough
one of them
decision for Dable
and
and Shane. That's a tough little time they're having there at 3. I would say this about just quickly about Mike. I got him for like 12 minutes, Shedeur. And in those 12 minutes, I asked him, if obviously accuracy is your superpower, what's your second one? And I thought he'd say toughness. I went on and on about how he stands in the pocket and takes it. And there's hits he is. I'm no expert, but everything that I've seen, I'm like, you're about to get hit and you take it. That's going to go. I know the NFL and I know how far that will take you as a rookie leader. I would also, and he said it was his decision making, which I thought was really well said. And I will say he was at the airport. He had his hood on. He was being so low key. He just left the Pittsburgh facility and he was around tons of people, trying not to be seen, to be respectful of me and my, not the ideal situation he would have wanted for an interview. And the amount of crap and just like people with their comments about his hood, and that is why I love him, because he's just gonna, there was no reason for him to get that. And he was getting it. I don't think any other player that could have shown up that way. Nobody cared about the context. Everyone just made a judgment. Like, he's not, take your hood off. That's disrespectful. Or he's not speaking loudly. Like he took the time at an airport, 3 seconds out of his huge day with Tomlin and the Steelers to talk about it. And that moment, that's, everyone is so critical and I hate everyone for that. And so I champion him.
I mean, I have a hood right now. I might just in solidarity go hood
well,
up.
You know
here
what? I'm going to put one, but it was so like obvious, like, and I wish I could get through it, but you can't. And he actually understands. The energy I got from him is he's like, I'm here. I'm confident. One thing that he said that I thought was interesting, and I want to move on for him a little bit, but you have so much to talk about in so little time. He did say, and he used the words slowly fading away. I was trying to compare, Dion to Tomlin a little bit. He said that he's slowly fading away from Dion. He hadn't even talked to him that day. I was like, what'd your dad say? Did he ask you questions? What do you think of that regarding him sort of like leaving the nest?
I mean, he's going to need to, because I think Dion is such a large presence. He commands the room, the space, the narrative at all times, partly because he demands it and partly just because people are interested in him. It is time for Shedeur to go and branch off and be his own, but he has been his own. And I've been closer to this than most, being a Colorado alum. And I was involved in the hiring process, and I know intimately how bad Colorado was before they got there. And as crucial as it was to get Dion there, I think the key to their turnaround and success the last 2 years wasn't technically Dion, it was Shedeur. And this is what I think is lost because everyone gravitates to kind of the giant gravitational pull of Deion Sanders and Coach Prime. Is like Shedeur was actually the key. It wasn't Travis, and it wasn't Coach, it was Shedeur. Why did they turn around to a 9-win team and a top 25 team 2 years after being a 1-win team that lost by an average of almost 30 points? Shedeur Sanders. So that gets lost a little bit. And what I hope that he takes from his dad, all of his time with his dad throughout his life. Do you remember the answer Deion gave in a press conference? And he said something along the lines of, and forgive me because I'm probably going to butcher it, but he said something along the lines of, what about me makes you think that I care about what you think about me?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's exactly what a quarterback needs to have, in the NFL, and in particular Shedeur, who I think is going to draw the ire of some just because of his last name.
Yeah. And his last, his dad was a multi positional player, of course. And you just mentioned Travis Hunter. So I'll ask you about him. He's your number one prospect on your top 50 big board. No surprise there, of course. What makes him unique even to the Champ Baileys, the Deion Sanders that, we've seen this kind of greatness before, right? But what makes him stand apart a little bit?
All of those guys, Charles Woodson and all these guys that have done two positions, majored in one and minored in another. And there was just usually majored on defense and then minored in some special personnel group situation on the offensive side of the ball. This guy is in the top 1 or 2 corners in the draft, and he's in the top 1 or 2 wide receivers in the draft. He is fully both positions, which is mind-blowing. It's hard to put into context when people are like, well, why him over Abdul Carter? And it's like, well, he's 2 players, number one. Let's start with that. I think that he's going to play both, okay? I think he's going to succeed on both sides of the ball. I think that one of the largest conversations and debates going on within those teams that are selecting up there in the top 5 is there is a giant argument and case being made by the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball for like why Travis should be on their side of the ball. And so it's going to be incredibly interesting for me to see an NFL organization and what they actually decide to do with him, because I firmly believe that he should be on both sides. And I've heard both takes. So let me give you my take, and then let me give you one other take. My take is that you make him a corner, and then you make him your number 3 wide receiver, because your number 3 wide receiver is a starter. He's fully in the game plan. And yet you're going to limit his snaps just based on personnel group and game situation, probably to about 25 to 35. Therefore, you can play the 60 to 65 snaps of defense. You can play the 30 to 35 snaps of offense, and you're sitting there under 100 snaps for the majority of your time, which is, he averaged almost 120, 125 in college. So he can do that even at the NFL level. Or there's this line of thinking that you make him fully a wide receiver because of what he can provide, maybe a young quarterback like Drake May. And then you make him kind of a dime nickel box player who thrives as an instinct player in the middle of the field, and you utilize his ball skills similar to like a Mikey Sainristil coming out of Michigan last year. I've heard both of those.
As a man who loves history like you, and as a fan who wants to see the optimization of a player like this, I'm looking right now at your amazing mock draft 2.0. Everybody go check it out with the great Joel Klatt. You have him going to the Browns. I'm not to slam the Browns. Will they use him? It makes me want him to go to Dable a little bit. I don't know. I sort of think that they might.
Or New England. Vrabel, I think, would be interesting.
There's no way he's making it to 4, right? There's no way.
Maybe. Oh, again, I think it depends on these quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Right.
Are you hearing this? Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
If Cleveland panics a little bit, like let's say Cam Ward goes number 1, and let's say Cleveland or New York select Shedeur. Do you take Abdul Carter or do you take Travis Hunter? So I think that there's a chance that he could slip to New England.
What a day for them if that happens. Him and Christian Gonzalez, get out of here.
I know.
Daniel Jeremiah told me that if Travis and Abdul do not make it to 4, he was like adamant that the Patriots need to move down. But now I'm hearing rumors about like Jalen Walker at 4 to the Patriots. If Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are off the board by the time the Patriots pick at 4, what should they do?
Gosh, Will Campbell would be interesting to try to protect Drake May, the tackle.
Yes.
Moving down is not bad. It really isn't, and that fits in the New England MO. I know that was more of a Belichick MO, but that would certainly fit the New England MO, because there are tackles that you could take later.
Right. Like, are you reaching for Campbell is the question, right? Like, why?
Probably.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's a very good thought exercise, and I would suggest a move down at that point.
Yeah. The Athletic was reporting, I'm sure you've heard, that there's like I think the words were real chatter, which is funny. Real chatter, I think among scouts, that Jackson Dart, the Ole Miss quarterback, could go before Shedeur. What do you make of that real chatter?
I respectfully disagree with that real chatter, and I would categorize it as fake chatter. There is a decent gap between the top 2 quarterbacks and then where Jackson Dart is. Not to take anything away from Jackson Dart. I really love him as a leader. I love he's going to succeed in the National Football League. I truly believe that. But it's way harder to project him because of his offense. Again, scripted winners, quick throws. Very few times is he asked to just sit there and control the game from the pocket. And granted, I'll give you this, that's most college quarterbacks, but that's certainly the case in a Lane Kiffin offense, which is why Lane can sit there with his hands up and be like, oh, touchdown. He knows where the ball is going. There's a lot of pre-snap decisions that are made by the quarterback, which is going to present a steeper learning curve for Jackson as he enters the league. Good player, really good player. I would love him on my team if I was a fan of any team in the National Football League, but there is a gap between him and the top 2 quarterbacks.
What do you make of his running ability? I feel like everyone, whenever I bring him up, talks about that as a huge plus for him.
It is. I think it's a plus in the sense that maybe you can, 1 or 2 times a game escape for a first down. I don't think you're not going to design anything around Jackson Dart's running ability. I think it's a plus. Shedeur is not very fleet of foot, although he can manipulate the pocket. I would say the same about Cam Ward. Jackson can move a little bit, there's no doubt, but it's nothing like a Jaden or a Caleb or these guys that have come out in the last few years, or a Jalen Hurts,
Is he a first-round guy? We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. If he is, I think it's because either Cleveland or New York get forced into a situation where they've got to jump into the late first round to get them. That's where I've got him going. One of those picks right there in the opening of the second round.
You have him as the 32nd ranked prospect. When are we getting 3.0, Joel? Quit watching the Masters.
3.0 a week from today. I know. Draft week. I've got it coming out a week from today. Yes.
And would you update it based on because it's interesting that you right away shot that down, like the Dart thing, that's why I love talking to you, because you sift through what's real and what's not. What is it how big of a difference? What will change most, do you think, from 2.0 to 3.0?
Remains to be seen. There are about 5 to 7 individuals that I know are not going to give me smoke. And then everybody else, I know that there's a percentage of smoke that I'm getting and smoke screen when doing this process. So those conversations will influence. My suspicion is going to be that I will end up moving Shedeur down.
Okay.
Probably New Orleans is what my final projection will be.
I love that for New Orleans. Get yourself your franchise quarterback. And it's not as far as division is concerned. And also they won't sign Aaron Rodgers. I'm not convinced that the Steelers aren't still meddling in that. So it'd give him a chance to start right away. Those are reasons that if I was in the Shedeur camp, I would enjoy being at 9. I talked to him about how important the number 1 pick is to him. I don't think I don't think he has a relationship with the glamour or sexiness of it. Not that I can tell from talking to him. Like, I think 9 would be, I mean, Steelers would be amazing. But then you also are dealing with the potential of like an air in there and a tough division.
I also, I think that maybe I'm wrong in this, but Kay, I think players are more savvy now and they realize that the second and third contract are more important than being the number 1 pick.
Especially him. He gets it. Yeah.
Especially him. Especially he understands, that this is more the long game than it is the short run. So, and maybe in the back of his mind, he's thinking to himself, boy, I'd rather be at an organization like Pittsburgh, who has been sustained success over really the generations. And maybe he would rather be with an offensive minded coach like Kellen at the beginning of that tenure versus like, let's face it, like New York. I hate to say this, but like, are we sure that regime is going to be there?
Ooh. I don't. It's an interesting question. Not if they keep
from
picking
his
at
perspective. I'm saying from his perspective, right?
Right.
Like, so
interesting. Not. I mean, Dable took this team to the playoffs. It wasn't forever ago.
Sure.
But then some of the decision making. I mean, the Saquon of it all. Like, that's certainly. I don't know how much grace is being given. I think that totally matters. And that's why I would, you take a Travis Hunter, that sort of, does that heal that wound a little bit for that fan base, for Mr. Mara, the sexiness of that, to find your sort of face? It might. I love that. Who's the next? Speaking receivers, last one for you. Travis Hunter, we get it. He's going quick. He's, your number 1 prospect. He'll go off the board. Who's the second receiver off the board? Why can I not find the clear answer to this?
I think it's going to be Tedero McMillan, the big wide receiver from Arizona, partly because like big frame players win in the playoffs, and you got to have guys that can win the one-on-one. And I would argue no one did that better than McMillan from the wide receiver perspective. And yet I will just tell you, my favorite player in the draft, period, is a wide receiver, and it's Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. Partly because, listen, this is the bias of being around him, and he is one of the great individuals I've ever covered in college football. I am rooting for him like I root for very few people in life. He's got a strong faith. He's an incredibly strong leader, and he comes from that wide receiver room, which, as you and I both know, everybody succeeds from, because Brian Hartline is so good. Won't shock me if he's the second wide receiver, but he's got a guy that I would have kicked myself if I didn't mention on this show, because I really love him so much. And again, if your team says the name Emeka Egbuka, you're going to love him, and he's going to contribute.
Really well said. We're going to get all this stuff out all over Twitter. But again, you can watch the Joel Klatt show. I don't even know what time you woke up to do. Like, I was like, he put out a show this morning already? Like, what? I haven't even had my coffee yet. But it's such an enjoyable listen. And you get all of this information. And if you are curious, everybody, about what really is the story of the day in the NCAA is Nico and what this precedent means. Please go listen to the Joel Klatt show, because you lay it out beautifully on both sides, and hopefully we get smarter and use it as a precedent to just have rules, as you said, which I love. And we'll see you hopefully in Green Bay in a month. We will be there. You'll be there. Yep. You'll be very busy, of course, hanging out with Daniel Jeremiah, chopping it up with Rich Eisen, complaining about the Jets and whoever they pick, and of course the fantastic and lovely Charles Davis. So we cannot wait to see you. And thank you so much for all you do. UFL is crazy that you're crushing that. I love it.
Yep. It's a busy spring. There's no doubt. And I know you got Malachi Starks coming up.
Yes.
What a phenomenal player he is. Listen, it's very rare that a guy can roll in as a freshman and just start for Kirby Smart because of the intricacies of that defense. Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, you put them in the same camp in that respect. And Malachi started something like 42 games, so like right away as a true freshman, has been an All-American since he stepped foot on campus, Let's leader. Go. Like I love, like, Malachi is a great player. I really like Malachi Starks.
Colorado record-setting quarterback, Fox Sports lead college football analyst, UFL analyst, and hype man of all college prospects, which we love, including Malachi Starks. Could not have said it better. We will be back after this. Thank you for the time. I know you're busy. Good luck on your next mock draft, and we'll see you next week, which is crazy.